Your daughter was rushed to the hospital in an emergency. Both mother and child are in a critical condition. I received this unexpected call from the OBGYN where my pregnant daughter was receiving her checkups. Apparently, my daughter had collapsed, buried in snow right outside our house, and was discovered by a neighbor who promptly called an ambulance. I couldn't wrap my head around this sudden turn of events, but immediately drove off to the hospital. Please let them be safe, God. Please protect my daughter and her unborn child. 2 hours later, I arrived at the hospital, only to be met with a harsh reality. My name is Grace. I'm 55 years old. My husband passed away in an accident 3 years ago. My daughter Kaylee, who was already married at the time, was worried about me, but I didn't want to intrude on her new family, so I declined their offer to live together and chose to live a couple of hours away by car. Kaylee, 27, is incredibly patient and not one to complain about trivial matters. Whenever I would call to check in, Kaylee always responded with a bright voice. Everything's fine. I'm enjoying life. Her husband, Blake, is a brash person who never even acted respectful to me, his mother-in-law, since the day we first met. His self-centered tendencies always put his opinions before Kaylee's, even during their wedding preparations, which often left me wondering if Kaylee was truly happy. However, I never anticipated this dire situation. Why was my pregnant daughter out in the snow? Please let her be safe. Upon arriving at the hospital, the person who called the ambulance was accompanying me. As I was hearing the details from them, the doctor in charge came to me. Your daughter is currently unconscious and in a very critical condition. Apparently, she was conscious when she was brought to the hospital, but she insisted that her husband should not be contacted, and gave them my phone number. In the hospital room, I held Kaylee's hand and kept calling her name. But sadly, she never opened her eyes again, and quietly passed away after a while. I can't believe that my dear Kaylee is no longer in this world. My body felt heavy, like lead, in this abyss of despair, and I couldn't stand up. After some time in shock, I had to call Blake, Kaylee's husband, from my cell phone. When he answered, it was clear from his slurred speech that he was heavily drunk. As soon as I said, "Hello?" he mistook me for Kaylee and started talking unilaterally. "Hey, Kaylee! Is all the snow at the entrance cleared? Once you're done, come pick me up in the car." Kaylee has passed away. Huh? What are you talking about? Who the hell are you? I struggled to hold back my tears and told him I was Kaylee's mother. For a moment, he seemed to hesitate, but he refused to believe that Kaylee had passed away, convinced that I was lying. You had Kaylee shoveling snow and took the house key to go out drinking, which led to this cruel outcome. Shoveling snow? How do you know about that? Ah, right. Kaylee must have told you. No, I heard it from the neighbor. Apparently, the neighbor found Kaylee fainting in the snow when they returned from shopping. When they asked what happened, Kaylee said something shocking. She had been locked out of the house by Blake before he went out drinking, so she couldn't receive her cell phone inside the house and lost consciousness in the freezing cold. The house key? Ah, right. I kept it because if it fell in the snow, it wouldn't be found. Don't lie! It seems you told my heavily pregnant daughter to stay outside until she finished shoveling snow. Stop nagging, old woman. Don't interfere in our marital matters. Also, stop making bad jokes about death. Kaylee couldn't just simply be gone. No matter how many times I explained to Blake that my daughter is no longer with us, he would not understand. Call a taxi and come home, immediately. I'm heading to your house too. Let's talk, face to face. No way! You and Kaylee are planning to blame everything on me, aren't you? Ugh, I feel sick. I'm too dizzy from the alcohol. I'll stay at a hotel nearby tonight. With that, he hung up the phone, unilaterally. My heartfelt words didn't reach his ears at all. I didn't think he could be this unreasonable, but I don't feel like calling him back either. Pondering on what to do next, I, who had lost the strength to drive 2 hours back to my own house, decided to spend the night at Kaylee's. I took a taxi, and when I arrived at Kaylee's house, I found vegetables like green onions and radishes left cut in the kitchen. She must have been preparing dinner. Just a few hours ago she was here, and now I can't even talk to her. This is too painful. Kaylee? As I wiped my tears and cleaned up the kitchen, I found Kaylee's diary in the kitchen cupboard. I remembered the conversations with the neighbor and the doctor. This might tell me about Kaylee's life. I was desperate to know why my daughter, who should have been eagerly waiting for the birth of her baby any day now, had to sleep forever. Believing that I would find the whole truth, I began reading the diary. The reality documented in it far exceeded my imagination. Kaylee had resigned from her job because her health deteriorated after pregnancy, and she couldn't go to work. Since then, Blake had berated her as a useless wife and a parasite eating into his money. She was forced to cook meals and make lunchboxes every day, despite suffering from morning sickness. Not only that, Blake would call her while at work to demand chores, hardly giving her any time to rest. If only I'd realized sooner what she was enduring, maybe Kaylee would still be here, healthy and happy. The diary revealed that even under these harsh circumstances, Kaylee never sought divorce because of a threatening remark Blake had made. "Don't you dare think about leaving me and becoming free. If we were to get divorced, I, the breadwinner, would take custody of the baby. You wouldn't get to see the child at all. So remember that." He took advantage of Kaylee's fear that she might not be able to raise a child alone, effectively shackling her with invisible bonds. Having finished reading the diary and imagining my daughter's pain, my heart trembled with sorrow, and I couldn't stop crying. I want to take revenge on Blake somehow. I won't be at peace until I've avenged Kaylee, but the diary alone isn't enough evidence to prove that he was responsible for her death. Despite my search, I found no definitive proof that Blake had cast my pregnant daughter out into the snow. As evening fell the next day, Kaylee's phone, which had been left at home, received a call from Blake. "Hey, Kaylee! Stop pretending to be dead! It won't work on me. Make my favorite dish tonight and wait for me at the entrance on your knees. How many times do I have to tell you that my daughter is gone? If that's true, then show me the proof." "Fine," I replied, quickly hung up, and immediately sent him a photo of Kaylee's death certificate. I figured that even someone like Blake would grieve upon learning that Kaylee had left this world because of him. As expected, he quickly called back. "Do you understand now?" "So, it's true then. Well, there's nothing to be done about the dead. I'll get the life insurance payout, and I can forget about the annoying past and start over. So, what about the funeral? What a hassle." Faced with Blake's nonchalant delivery of these incredibly cruel words, my hand began to shake with anger. I can't let a man like that be the chief mourner. I will send my daughter myself off to the other world. Swallowing my anger, I made a proposal to Blake. "I'll arrange the funeral, and I'll act as the chief mourner. You attend as the husband. You pay all the funeral costs, but I get all the condolence money." "Understood." "All right. I'll have to make sure my relatives come. Try to invite as many of your relatives as possible so that I can get a hefty thumb." With a cheerful voice, Blake said, "I'll be living in a hotel for a while," and abruptly hung up the phone. He must be a very greedy man. Despite knowing the tragic end Kaylee met, he remains unperturbed, showing no remorse towards his deceased wife and unborn child. My heart, which was devastated by the loss of Kaylee, changed to a desire for revenge against Blake, and a raging fire of revenge began to burn. I can't let Kaylee's pain go unanswered. I'll show Blake the hell of this world. I stayed at Kaylee's house until the funeral, preparing everything. Then, on the day of Kaylee's funeral, Blake approached me, hands in his pockets and a sleazy smirk on his face. "I'll play the part of a grieving husband who couldn't be the chief mourner. You do your part well. Once the funeral's over, I'll take the condolence money and leave immediately." His words infuriated me. But I prioritized sending my precious daughter off. Both families gathered, crying and saying she was so young to leave us. It's heartbreaking. I can't believe Kaylee is gone. After a few words of grief, I then stood in front of the microphone to make a speech as the chief mourner. Thank you all for gathering here today to remember my daughter Kaylee. The truth is, I started to explain to the entire family how our late-term pregnant daughter had left us. The solemn air shifted to murmurs of shock, and at this, Blake abruptly stood. Don't be fooled by this old woman's lies. Kaylee insisted on shoveling the snow herself, ignoring my objections. That's why this happened. Ugh! I was at a loss for words as he began to feign tears. I had predicted Blake would react this way, and so I opened my daughter's diary that I had brought with me. This is an entry from the day before Kaylee passed away. Blake told me to clean every nook and cranny of the house, but my belly was aching, so I couldn't do it today. He got angry and threw away all the dinner when I was about to eat. I'm worried if the baby didn't get enough nutrition. That's an exaggeration. I merely slipped and knocked the food off the table. She's making me out to be the villain. She's too delusional. He interrupted, but I ignored him and continued reading. If we divorce, I, who am unemployed, won't be able to raise the child by myself. Blake told me, if you don't want to lose custody, you'll be my slave for life. Don't read things that aren't written there. You're causing everyone to misunderstand me. Despite his loud protests, his face was steadily paling. His expression seemed to indicate the truth. He started to come towards me as if he couldn't hold back anymore, but some of our relatives stopped him. You think you can get away with this? I'll call the police and put you in jail for defamation. Are you not the one who should be arrested by the police? Don't get ahead of yourself. Watch your mouth. His true nature couldn't be hidden, no matter how much he tried. Blake's face, glaring sharply at me, was pure villainy to anyone who looked. The attendees sighed and murmured, "What a terrible man. The worst kind of man." Oh, well, I may have overreacted a bit. Kaylee just wrote about our insignificant spousal quarrels in her diary, in an exaggerated way. Please believe me. It seemed he still thought he could talk his way out of this, unaware of the gravity of his actions. I informed him that neglecting a pregnant woman and her unborn child and leaving them out in the cold would result in severe punishment. You have no proof. If you have it, show it. He looked down on me, snorting with a laugh, seemingly thinking I was just bluffing. We do have evidence. Before coming to the funeral home, I had checked the dashcam footage from our neighbor's car, which had captured everything. Huh? It's amazing that it's always recording, even when the engine is off. Well, I'm about to call the police. As I showed him the SD card from the dashcam, Blake clicked his tongue. Damn! I had already contacted not only the neighbors, but also the doctor who had treated Kaylee, asking them to testify. I was wrong. It was my fault. So let's settle this amicably. I'll give you half of the life insurance and the condolence money. So please forgive me. Stop joking around. I lost my daughter, who was more precious to me than my own life. You think you can solve this with money? I hope you experience the despair Kaylee felt in the cold and harsh outdoors. As I immediately called the police and explained the whole situation, they agreed to rush to the funeral home. Meanwhile, the relatives who attended the funeral kept an eye on Blake to prevent him from escaping. You'll be picked up soon. You should atone to Kaylee before then. Kaylee, I'm sorry. Please save me from the other world. After calling out to Kaylee with an insincere voice, Blake then turned to me and began to grovel pathetically. Mother-in-law, I'll apologize as many times as it takes. So please call the police back and tell them it was a mistake. Please? I shook my head strongly, looking at my daughter lying in the coffin. Kaylee was looking forward to meeting her baby. I'll avenge your grievances. As I coldly looked down on Blake, who was approaching, He sensed something, and his face turned ashen, starting to tremble. "No! Help me!" Blake began to panic, shedding tears and trying to escape. But Blake was held in a tight grasp by his father and relatives, rendering him immobile. He was soon taken away by the arriving police, disappearing in the back of a patrol car. His parents and relatives later bowed deeply to me and my daughter, offering apologies repeatedly. When I glanced at my daughter's face, which now rested in the coffin, it seemed to bear a slight smile. Finally, the weight on her chest has been lifted. Kaylee, now you can embark on your journey to the other world without any worries. The dashcam footage and testimonies served as the smoking gun, and Blake was put behind bars. He would spend some time in the cold, high-walled prison, surrounded by intimidating individuals. Becoming a criminal, he was also fired from his job. Since his parents and relatives have declared their intention to cut ties with him, his future life will undoubtedly be harsh. By the way, I didn't tell Blake, as he never asked, but Kaylee's baby was born, safe and sound, and I have decided to raise it. Kaylee had named me as the beneficiary of her life insurance, so when the child grows up, I plan to pass everything on. I'm thankful that at least the grandchild is safe. From now on, I will pour double the love into this child, mine and that of my lost daughter.
Sarah is my name. Tom, my husband, and I have been married for 2 years. I had hoped to start a family by now, but we have yet to be blessed with children. I enjoy my job and it gives me a sense of purpose in life, though, so I'm not in a hurry to have children, but it's different for Tom. Tom recently expressed his disappointment at me in not yet having children. How soon will you be expecting a child? Please, for God's sake, hurry up. My mother is excited about it. I went to the hospital, but nothing was wrong with me. If you insist, let's have you checked out as well. You're implying that I'm the reason you can't have children? It can't be my fault. How do you know? There are a lot of families whose men are the cause. There's no way I'm the reason for this problem. Don't bring it up again. Then, since neither of us is infertile, consider it a gift and let's take our time and wait a little longer. Why are you being so easy on yourself? My mother needs to see her grandchild as soon as possible. Tom is pressured by his mother every time he sees her. Is my grandchild here yet? He is still refusing to go to the hospital to be examined, which is causing problems. And for some reason, he's convinced he's not infertile. I was so concerned, I went for another checkup, but there was nothing specific that needed to be treated. Tom didn't seem to understand that we only have one chance to have a child each month, and kept asking me if we could have a child yet. I was tired of him asking me, "Are you ready for a baby yet?" Mom told me the same thing today. She said she wished she could see the face of her grandchildren as soon as possible. Again? Please hurry up. Mom is looking forward to it. There's no way to hurry up. Even when we're having a normal conversation, we always end up having the same conversation. And then we start fighting. We have had fewer and fewer conversations as a couple over time. Perhaps it was because we didn't talk much, but we had a lot of problems like this. Mom is on her way over. What? Right now? What does it matter? If she's coming, please let me know ahead of time so I can prepare. You're talking a lot. She has a message for you. Is it about kids again? This is enough for me. I don't mind. I'm not sure. That's what I'm told every time I see her. It's your fault we can't have children, so please, explain it to her. My mother-in-law entered the room as we were having this conversation. I'm sorry to have bothered you, and here you have it. My mother-in-law then came in and handed me something. What is this? You can see for yourself. They're a belly band and a lucky charm. What is the purpose of a belly band? It's critical to keep your stomach cool when trying to conceive, so make use of it. It's too hot to be wearing a fuzzy belly band in the summer. That's the wrong attitude to have. This room is too cold because of the air conditioning. It chills your stomach. Sorry. And how do you use this amulet? It's a lucky charm from a well-known temple for children. After praying there, I heard that a celebrity had a baby. It appeared to bring good luck, so I drove all the way there yesterday, despite the distance. You didn't have to go that far. Don't be so concerned, just because you're so laid back. I'm looking forward to seeing my grandchildren. As I previously said, I went to the hospital and it was not me. I explained it again to my mother-in-law, but no matter how many times I told her, she didn't get the message. Tom was sitting a good distance away from us, pretending as if it was none of his business. Why don't you get pregnant then? I'm not sure why you're asking. Why don't you try another hospital for another checkup? Why not seek treatment at a more specialized hospital? I'll see what I can do to find you a better one. You don't have to do that. I'm positive it's not Tom, so I can only think it's because of you. Tom has not yet been examined. How are you so certain he is not infertile? Because Tom, who was supposedly not listening, abruptly cut the conversation short. Mom, don't say unnecessary things, he advised. Sorry. My mother-in-law abruptly stopped speaking after that. I'm sure a package will be delivered by courier tomorrow, so please receive it. I just wanted to get this to you today, so I'm leaving. My mother-in-law then left me with only a belly wrap and a charm to protect the child. The following day, when the package arrived, I laughed. Inside were all the good luck charms I needed to have a child. Your mother sent a package to me. What was inside? Pomegranates, herring, roe, and peaches. What made her send those? All three are considered lucky foods and are said to bring good fortune to have children. I see. Mom must be desperate to see her grandchildren. I understand her emotions, but it's a bit much. Why are you talking that way about Mom? She is genuinely excited about the birth of her grandchild. Don't you think you're under pressure as well? Yes, but it's not my concern. It's none of my business. It has nothing to do with me. What do you mean it has nothing to do with you? It's between us because we're a couple. It's your fault you are unable to have children, so no, it is none of my business. It's all my fault that I can't get pregnant. But I've been to the hospital and they say nothing is wrong with me. So why don't you go to another hospital and get a thorough examination like my mom suggested? Why don't you ask her to help you find a good hospital? The hospital where I went was a well-known fertility clinic. Perhaps it's just well-known. It could be a charlatan. If you're going to say that, why don't we ask your mom to find one? Finally, you're willing to go through with it. Yes, if you will get checked out as well. Why should I go to the hospital? I couldn't figure out why Tom was so sure of himself. Then I was told something I didn't know before. I've never told you anything, but you've been suspecting me for a long time, and I'm tired of hiding it, so I will tell you. What is that? This is actually my second marriage. What? What exactly do you mean? I was so surprised that I sounded stupid in my reply. I divorced 2 years ago before I got married to you. How come you didn't tell me? Well, I got divorced because my partner cheated on me. She didn't ask for child support or anything, and so I didn't think it was necessary to tell you. Do you mean to imply that you have children? A son, yes. I've never seen him since he was born following the divorce. I'm confused. I can't follow what you said. That shows that I'm not incapable of having children. That's why you were so certain that you weren't? I'm offended that you believe it's because of me. But it's not impossible that you became infertile during the 2 years following your divorce. You still want to point the finger at others. You are the problem, so admit it and take action. I am not referring to admitting or not admitting. You're starting to irritate me. Thus, in my 2nd year of marriage, I discovered for the first time that Tom was divorced and had a child. Even after hearing that story, I wasn't totally convinced that I was to blame for my inability to have children. I decided to learn more about Tom. I'll tell him I want a divorce after I finish my research. I couldn't stay with Tom any longer. I tried my hardest not to talk to Tom because he was always saying hurtful things to me. Of course, we would never have conjugal relations under such circumstances, so I could never get pregnant. My mother-in-law, who was unaware of the situation, continued to pressure me. Tom then approached me one day. He looked irritated. By now, I'm used to being treated with disdain. He opened his mouth. I am currently thinking about a divorce. I don't like spending time with you because we don't talk anymore and all we do is fight. And we can't have children no matter how long I wait. I was taken aback by his abrupt statement, but I responded calmly. What? That's fine. What? Tom was perplexed by my response for some reason. He must have expected me to say I don't want a divorce. Here are the divorce papers. I've already completed all of the required fields. What? Why is it already completed? I filled them out so that I could divorce you whenever I wanted. Do you want to get a divorce? Yes. I was only half kidding. I'm not looking for a joke. Do you really want a divorce? You said it yourself. I didn't expect it to end this way. Did you expect me to sob and say I didn't want a divorce? Yes. We don't talk much anymore, so I thought this would be a good time to talk things through and make amends. So why didn't you just say that from the beginning? I want things to return to how they were. That's impossible. I'll divorce you right now if that's what you want. That is something I do not want you to do. I'm not sure what you meant when you told me you wanted a divorce. Tom continued to complain, despite the fact that he had told me he wanted a divorce. Despite the futility of the situation, our discussions continued. Then my mother-in-law arrived in good timing. What's going on all of a sudden? I went out with some friends and brought you some souvenirs. Souvenirs? She presented me with another amulet. I went to a different childbirth shrine, so I brought you back a souvenir. I've been praying there, and I'm confident it will bring you good fortune this time. We don't need this anymore. My mother-in-law's face lit up at these words. She looked to have misinterpreted something. I had a feeling things were about to get complicated again. Well, whatever. Does this imply that you no longer require it? What? Finally, I suppose it's because of all my efforts. I'm so relieved. It is partly correct. We have to go again to pray our appreciation. My mother-in-law stood in front of me, a happy expression on her face. Tom stood next to me, his eyes downcast, saying nothing. I was anticipating how dissatisfied my mother-in-law would be with my next words. What exactly is it? Don't be so bold as to tell me what I think you're going to say. We've decided to divorce. What? Divorce? Yes. I assumed you were expecting a child. What do you mean that you're divorcing? We were just discussing it. Was this a sudden decision? Not at all. I've been considering it for quite some time. Are you going to flee because you can't have children? That is not the reason I am divorcing him. But that's okay. If you are incapable of getting pregnant, it's better for him to divorce you and marry a second woman. It will be a third marriage, not a second marriage. You knew that? I found out about it the other day. His ex-wife became pregnant shortly after they divorced. Okay. So I can only conclude that you were the culprit. If you leave, I will be relieved. I see. Tom has always been popular with the girls. He'll soon find a partner. Hopefully, our next meeting will result in a pregnancy. So if you've already made up your mind, get divorced as soon as possible. I'm leaving. You two discuss the rest. My mother-in-law then left. She walked away without knowing the truth. We carried on our conversation. Let's file the divorce papers right away so we can be divorced. I want to have children soon, and now I realize I dislike spending time with you. Let's go ahead and get divorced. Then quickly write it. I handed him the papers to complete his part. All I needed to do was turn them in. Tom, by the way, you will have to leave the house when we divorce. What? Why? I'm making mortgage payments. Have you forgotten? My parents paid off the loan and bought this house all at once. You were simply repaying my parents' loan. I was. So you're leaving because of this. I believe we had quite a bit of money saved up. I don't have any money saved up. But didn't you say you had approximately 10 million? That is the money I saved when I was single. As a result, it is not included in the property division. As a result, neither the house nor the money will be mine. That's correct. Well, it doesn't matter. You're taking a new path. Yes. In addition, I'm going to sue you and your mother for emotional distress. What? Why? For so long, you've treated me like a defective human being, saying horrible things to me. It's the truth. Do you really believe I'm the reason I couldn't conceive? It's self-evident. I have a biological child. I told Tom, who had no idea what was going on, everything. It appears that your child from your ex-wife is not yours. What nonsense are you talking about? I was curious about Tom's partner after learning that his marriage to me was not his first, so I searched his house for clues. Soon after, I discovered a picture. Tom is the type of person who keeps old memories rather than discarding them, and I discovered a few memories in the back of a drawer in his work desk. I looked up her name on social media. Fortunately, I got a hit right away. I quickly discovered what kind of person Tom's ex-wife was. Isn't this your ex-wife? I showed him the screen from SNS. Tom looked surprised. It was no surprise. Is the child in this picture your child? Tom was perplexed. I went on with my story. This child clearly has a foreign face. I was looking at your ex-wife's SNS and her husband is from another country. I'm not familiar with him. It seems that they're living abroad. I divorced my ex-wife without much debate because she cheated on me. But before the divorce, she got pregnant and claimed it's our child. I'm pretty sure it was his child. Really. In any case, you have no biological children. Is it possible that I am the reason you are unable to have children? That, I believe, is most likely the case. I did go to another hospital and my body was fine. I'm also going to get checked out. Will you drop the divorce and go through treatment with me if I'm the reason you haven't been able to conceive? Why would I do that? I've already completed the divorce paperwork. I'll simply file them tomorrow. Don't say that. I still like you. You don't like being around me, do you? If you're so popular, you'll find someone new soon, as your mother predicted. Let's talk about it again. I'm going to file for divorce tomorrow, and I'd like you to pack your belongings and leave this week. Oh, no. Didn't you say you wanted a divorce? I'll consult with my attorney about alimony. You'll have a message later. I filed for divorce the next day. We had become strangers. Tom packed his belongings and reluctantly left the house to his parents' place. Tom seems not to have informed his mother that he may have been the reason he is unable to have children. His mother has been nagging him to remarry as soon as possible after the divorce because she wants to see her grandchildren. If he does marry again, I pity his next wife. His mother will undoubtedly put a lot of pressure on that next person for not being able to have children. Since my divorce, I've been working harder than ever at the job I like. I sold the house I shared with Tom. Fortunately, I was able to sell it for a high price, so I repaid my parents the money I had set aside, as well as the alimony I received from Tom and his mother. I'm living in an apartment. I am dating my coworker, who was originally a good friend of mine at work and was listening to me talk about my divorce. And now we're living together in an apartment. If I could marry this man, I hope that we would be blessed with children, and that I'll be happy next time.
We were 3 months into our marriage. Finally, we had our honeymoon planned, and then my husband said something unbelievable. So, my parents will be joining us on our honeymoon. Excuse me? His parents? Joining our honeymoon? Is that even a thing? Not caring about my feelings. The audacity of it all. Well, I'm going to get back at him in my special way. My name is Estella. I married Theodore 3 months ago, and we finally became a couple, just as we always wanted. And at last, we've scheduled our honeymoon. We got married on our anniversary, but at the time we were both so busy at work that we couldn't even think about going on a honeymoon. Plus, a few years ago, an epidemic started to spread, making overseas travel a challenge. So we decided to go to Anchorage for our 4-night, 5-day honeymoon. Hey, Theodore, I really want to go to the Alaska State Museum. I just want to eat good food, seafood, and traditional Alaskan dishes. That sounds great. Like lefse or a moose burger? Oh, and a berry dessert. You're more excited about the food than I am, Estella? Because I can't wait. We were worried that we might not be able to have our honeymoon, but now that we know we can, we're super excited. 2 days before our honeymoon, in the midst of our busy work, we were slowly getting ready for our trip. Just one more day of hard work, and then it's our honeymoon. We'll finally be free from our heavy workload and be able to relax the day after tomorrow. As I was happily packing in our room, Theodore came in. Oh, you're always so quick with your preparations. I haven't done anything yet. You always wait until the last minute, Theodore. If you forget anything because you're rushing, don't blame me. Okay, I'll be careful. Oh, right, I have something to tell you, Estella. While continuing to pack, I responded, What? My parents will be joining us on our honeymoon. What? I unintentionally stopped what I was doing. Taken aback by his sudden statement, I nervously asked, Wait, Theodore, you did say honeymoon, right? Yeah, so? What do you mean your parents are coming with us? They want to come along, so they're coming. Our honeymoon is for us, right? That's what I'm saying. Aren't you getting it? No. Who's the one not getting it here? How did we end up inviting our parents to our honeymoon? In stark contrast to my anger, my husband seemed rather nonchalant. My parents are joining us on our honeymoon. He didn't seem to question it at all. Hey, Theodore? I thought a honeymoon was supposed to be a trip for the couple. Alone. Huh? Not huh. I mean, it's our honeymoon, right? It's our first trip as a couple, so why are your parents coming? Isn't that strange? What are you talking about? Theodore looked down at me with a puzzled expression. My parents want to come, so they're coming. It's not like it cancels our trip. Or what? You don't want my parents around? That's not it, but it's our honeymoon. I didn't realize you were such a self-centered person, Estella. I'm disappointed. After telling him just that, my husband left the room with a sigh, thinking only of myself. Who's doing that here? Ignoring my feelings and just approving his parents coming along with us? What's he thinking? Tomorrow, I need to talk to Theodore again. I have to stop his parents from coming. As I was packing, I tried to pump myself up. The next day, during lunch break, I sent a message to my husband. I want to talk when we get home. If I missed today, there'd be no other chance. I had to express my feelings clearly and secure our honeymoon for just the two of us. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. It was a call from my mother-in-law. I had a bad feeling about this. Given my mother-in-law's nature, if I ignored the call, she would keep calling until I responded. I reluctantly answered the call. Hello? What the hell is going on, Estella? Mother, what's happened? Catching her breath, my mother-in-law yelled over the phone. Don't play dumb! This morning, Theodore told me. You refused to let us come along on the trip? What on earth is your intent? Refused? Well, this trip is a honeymoon for Theodore and me. So what? We can't come along when our own son is going on a trip? What's the problem? What's the problem? Generally speaking, it's quite odd for parents to come along on a honeymoon. What? So you're saying that we're unreasonable? How rude! This is hopeless. She doesn't get it at all. What the world sees as unreasonable seems reasonable to her. I need to stop this somehow. But on the other hand, I have no idea how. Unfazed by my despair, my mother-in-law's machine gun talk continued. Are you listening? To you, I'm already your mother. How could you behave this way towards your mother? Mother, please calm down first. Calm down in this situation? You should be grateful that you have us to supervise your honeymoon. Grateful? What is she talking about? She just wants to go to Anchorage for herself, right? This is our long-awaited honeymoon? Why do I have to be grateful? Even after that, my mother-in-law was far from satisfied. I won't tolerate such disrespect for parents, she shouted, and the call ended. When I got back from work, my husband was already back, drinking a beer on his own. Oh, welcome back. His casual greeting irritated me, and I blurted out more harshly than intended. It's not about welcome back. Your mom called me at work today. She made it seem like everything yesterday was my fault. Why are you so angry? Wasn't it your fault for refusing my parents in the first place? That's not the point. Let me be clear. It's common sense that parents don't come on a honeymoon. Despite my desperate appeal, my husband sighed, looking annoyed. Ugh. My anger peaked, and I let out all the resentment I had been harboring. Also, ever since we got married, your mom has been making snide remarks at me. That's why I absolutely can't go on a trip with her. Snide remarks? My mom wouldn't say something like that. Behind Theodore's back, no less, even after I've told you over and over on the phone. So it was. Only 3 months into our marriage, I was already on the receiving end of my mother-in-law's nastiness. We didn't see each other that much, so the direct harm wasn't too severe. Are you preparing balanced meals? Send me photos as proof. You're deliberately avoiding showing your face, aren't you? After you stole Theodore from me. And such, I often received unpleasant remarks via phone and email. Anyway, that's the situation. I don't want to have a bad time up to our honeymoon. Dismissing my concerns as if they were stubbornness, my husband simply shrugged. Hey, my mom isn't saying these things out of malice, right? Huh? You're still saying that even after I've explained this much? My mom is saying these things because she cares about you, Estella. Don't you want to be a good wife? Like my mom? Like my mom? A good wife like her? What is he talking about? So to him, that's what a good wife looks like? At that moment, the tension snapped. If he's going to disregard my feelings that much, I have my own plans. I immediately contacted my parents and told them about my plan. Initially surprised, my parents quickly accepted my scheme. And then on the day of our honeymoon, as we headed to the airport, sure enough, my in-laws were already there. My mother-in-law grinned at me. Estella, let's enjoy today, shall we? She must have been thrilled that her son sided with her. She had a triumphant look on her face all along. But I was unfazed. I had my own secret plan after all. We safely arrived in Anchorage and began our sightseeing. Just as I'd imagined, my in-laws sandwiched my husband and had a blast, leaving me out in the cold. Hey, Theodore, I want to eat seafood. Mom, what a coincidence. I was thinking of eating seafood too. Hey, I want to eat Lebkuchen. Dad, you've always loved that kind of food, haven't you? Let's go drink some beer later. This was just a regular family vacation. It was far from a honeymoon. Estella, could you carry my luggage? What? Why should I? Ignoring my raised eyebrows, my mother-in-law started rotating her shoulders. My body has been aching lately. I want to enjoy this trip without any worries. Well, this is supposed to be a honeymoon? Then my husband glared at me and said, Just carry it. At the same time, she thrust her bag at me. Then thank you, Estella. Theodore, let's go eat seafood. Hey, why don't you carry it? And about the seafood, Lebkuchen and beer? I want to eat them too. 30 minutes later, we arrived at the restaurant and everybody ordered seafood. Might as well eat something delicious and distract myself. Just as I thought that, my mother-in-law pointed to the menu and said, Estella, this cheapest one should be fine for you, right? Huh? You're the daughter-in-law. It's only natural that you order something cheaper than us, right? Are you kidding me? Why do you have to choose my menu? The husband and father-in-law didn't utter a word, even as things got this heated. On the contrary, they were like, well, that's true. Well, she is the wife after all. And they even agreed with them. Just when my irritation was reaching its peak, a voice said, Sorry to keep you waiting. The husband and the in-laws turned around and their eyes widened. There stood my parents. Oh, Dad, Mom! Estella, sorry we're late. Thanks for inviting us this time. It's been a while since your father went on a trip, so he's pretty excited. The sudden appearance of my parents made my husband intervene in a hurry. Hey, what's going on here, Estella? Huh? What do you mean? I didn't hear anything about you inviting your parents. Don't decide things on your own. That's rude. Rude? How come? Theodore invited his parents, so I just invited mine, that's all. Seizing the moment, my mother-in-law jumps into the conversation. Wait a minute. Estella, what are you thinking? Inviting your parents without our consent, isn't that too uncivilized? Why so? Since you came with your family, I don't see why I can't invite my parents, do I? Mother-in-law was clenching her teeth and glared at me. Seeing this, my mom stepped in. Oh, mother-in-law, long time no see. Our daughter always tells us how much you care for her. Oh, hello. Why are you here today? To this, my mom reacted with a confused look. Huh? Well, Estella told us apparently it's common to bring your parents on the honeymoon in Theodore's family. Can Mom and Dad come? Well, what a lovely tradition you have. Yeah, that's how it is. Perhaps because I had told them about being made to carry the luggage, this time my dad was pretending to have a bad back. Sorry, Theodore, my back's a bit bad. Can you carry the suitcase for me? Saying so, he half forcefully handed his luggage to Theodore. Huh? Well, father-in-law, about the luggage, that's not... Sorry. Ugh, it hurts. Guess I'm getting old. But you're a man, Theodore. You can handle a little luggage, can't you? Estella could do it. Right? Yes. At this, even my mother-in-law's face went pale. But it didn't stop there. Next came a counterattack from my mom. At a cafe where we stopped for a break, Mom pointed at the menu and said, Theodore, you'll be okay with the cheapest one here, won't you? Huh? Well, you're the son-in-law. It's only natural that you order something cheaper than us, right? This was the first time I saw my husband and in-laws so shaken. I couldn't help but burst into laughter, and my parents winked at me. Good job, Mom and Dad. I gave my parents a vigorous V sign. With the intervention of my parents, my husband and in-laws have been on their best. It seems they finally got the message when they got a taste of their own medicine. That night, in the hotel where we were staying, my husband approached me, bowing his head deeply. Estella, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much of a hassle it would be to have my parents join us on this trip. So you finally get it now? I said, hands on my hips. The bag-carrying incident, the cafe incident, my parents did all that on purpose, just to help you understand how I feel, Theodore. Yeah, I get it. I'm really sorry. I'll have a word with my folks, too. Thanks. Remember, this is our honeymoon. After that, my husband convinced his parents to leave the next day. My parents also decided to go sightseeing on their own, saying, We'll go enjoy the sights and head back. And thus, on the second day, our true honeymoon began. Whether out of guilt or not, my husband prioritized the places I wanted to visit. He was constantly gauging my mood and seemed nervous, so I'm not sure if he enjoyed himself. Well, I guess that's his just desserts. He had put me through so much trouble, it's only fair he puts up with this. Towards the end of the trip, I made him buy lots of souvenirs for me. This was the least he could do to make amends, right? Even after we returned from our honeymoon, my husband continued to be considerate. He started to help out more around the house. And maybe, thanks to his persuasion, I haven't been getting those nasty emails from my mother-in-law. I'm not sure how long this situation will last. If there are any problems in the future, I'll seek help from my parents again. I have people who will protect me, who stand strong on my side. I am determined to live each day without strain, savoring this comforting truth.
I, Lisa, tied the knot last year with Harry, my boyfriend of 3 years. We first met on social media. It all began when Harry, a friend of a friend, liked a photo of me and started following me. He's 2 years younger and works as a software engineer. Though he's in tech, he's also a great communicator and seemed to be recognized as a rising star at his company. On our second anniversary, Harry proposed. It was a truly simple proposal. At our favorite local Italian restaurant, just before dessert, he began, "I have something to say." Curious, I waited, and then he said, "Will you marry me?" Presenting a ring. It was a straightforward proposal, but it deeply moved me. Of course, I immediately replied, "Yes, I'd love to." Later, I learned from Harry that before we even started dating, during a casual drink with friends, the topic of ideal proposals came up. I had mentioned wanting something simple, and he remembered it all along. Afterwards, we held our engagement party at a hotel in New York. That's when I first met Harry's family. He has his parents and an older sister, who's 6 years his senior and was also planning to get married soon. Harry, standing at 5'6", is on the shorter side for a guy. His entire family is also quite petite. On the other hand, I am tall for a woman at 5'5". My mom, a former model, is even an inch taller than me. And my dad stands tall at 5'10". I couldn't help but feel a bit concerned about our height differences. I've always been attracted to shorter guys, usually around 5'3". Conversely, Harry has a thing for taller women. So we were a perfect match in that sense. Our engagement party, however, lacked a certain spark. Later, I found out that Harry's mother and sister had been criticizing my family and me. After that meeting, we got married in August, 3 months later. Instead of a lavish ceremony, we just wanted a casual, fun gathering with friends. So, we simply held a wedding announcement party. This didn't sit well with Harry's mother and sister. When we visited Harry's family home after the wedding, they openly showed their displeasure. It was summer and I wore a yellow floral sleeveless dress with heeled sandals. They began, "Could you not wear something like that to someone's house?" "I'm so sorry, I'll go change right away." Feeling I'd made a mistake, I rushed home to change. When I returned, Harry's mother criticized the Baumkuchen cake I brought. "Who wants to eat such a thing in this heat? Normally people bring cooler looking, refreshing desserts, don't they?" I had chosen the Baumkuchen because it's delicious when chilled. "You really don't think things through. I guess your model mother couldn't teach you better. Just because you have a small face doesn't mean you have a big brain. Looks aren't everything, especially in our family. We value consideration, not like your family that only cares about appearances." I was shocked to hear them speak about my mother and father this way. I looked to Harry for support, but he seemed lost in thought. On our way home, Harry began, "About what my mom and sister said earlier?" "Yeah?" "I never expected them to act like that. They had made some comments after the engagement party, but I thought they'd come around. I'm really sorry." "It's okay. We'll get to know each other better over time." probably. Yeah, but I never thought they'd be like that. I was naive. Don't worry about it. Accepting someone new into the family can be challenging. At that time, knowing Harry cared was enough for me. I don't want to be taken advantage of by someone else, and I just need to take the time to build a relationship of trust. One day, Harry's sister messaged him, saying she and her husband wanted to visit our home. So, on a Saturday afternoon, they were scheduled to come over. I have to work this Saturday. Can you handle them alone? Harry had asked his sister to reschedule, but she insisted on that day. Yeah, I'll take care of everything. And so, on Saturday, Harry's sister and her husband arrived. Please make yourselves at home. We're here to see if you're living properly. After I quickly cleared the tea and cake, my sister-in-law said, All right, let's see your place, and hurried off to the bedroom. To my shock, she started opening my closet without asking. Please don't go through my closet without permission. Why not? I came to see if you're living properly. Who knows? Maybe you just shove everything in there without cleaning. That's not true. Then she began taking pictures of the closet's contents with her phone. Hey, what are you doing? Don't take pictures without asking. My mom asked me to. She wanted photos. It was so rude. She checked every drawer, even commenting on the color of my underwear, took pictures of the dresser's contents, the bathroom cabinet, and even under the kitchen sink. She meticulously photographed the living room cabinet where we keep our valuables. No matter how many times I asked her to stop, she continued taking pictures throughout the house. In the living room, she noticed our high-end brand TV, a gift from my parents, and remarked with a hint of disdain, You have a pretty nice TV. She then snapped a photo and said to her husband, who had been silently following her, We need to step up our game. That night, after my husband returned from work, I told him everything. I couldn't help but cry a little. We might need to set some boundaries. My dad has been giving me some intel too. Really? Just wait and see. In April, it had been 5 years since my husband's grandmother passed away, so there was a family gathering. Since we didn't have a wedding, this was my first time meeting my husband's extended family. His family originally moved from Atlanta, and the gathering was held there. Of course, most of the relatives live in Atlanta. The gathering was overwhelming. There were so many relatives, and it was hard to remember everyone. My mother-in-law, probably on purpose, didn't introduce me to anyone. I asked my husband to introduce me. However, everyone seemed to sense the tension, and their reactions were lukewarm at best. My sister-in-law, trying to show off, deliberately chatted happily with the relatives in front of me. When I looked lost, she swooped in and said, She's so clueless. All she cares about is her looks. Come on, help out. My mother-in-law joined in, treating me as the clueless daughter-in-law. Time passed, and my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed no signs of improving. One day, in early fall, my mother-in-law suggested a family trip. She wanted to go to Boston since the Acela Express passed through there. Everyone agreed, and it was decided that my father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, husband, and I would go. My brother-in-law couldn't join due to work. I was looking forward to the trip in September when the weather was cooler. However, I was worried about being harassed by my mother-in-law and sister-in-law during the trip. But this time, my husband would be with me. I had never been to Boston, so I was excited. We planned to use a long weekend for the trip. On the day, while my husband and father-in-law were buying snacks, my mother-in-law suddenly said, "Oh no, I think I left my glasses at the cafe we were at earlier." "The cafe upstairs?" "Yes. Can you go get them?" Which store is that?" "Isn't there an area on the second floor where there are several stores lined up? It's a self-service cafe over there." "But our train is leaving soon, isn't it?" "That's why I'm asking you to hurry." "But do you expect me to go through the trip without my glasses?" "I didn't mean—" "Just go!" Reluctantly, I ran off to find her glasses. There's no way I'd make it back in time for the train. I ran as fast as I could. "We've got the snacks. Let's hurry." "Let's go." "Where's Lisa?" "She said she needed the restroom and went ahead." "All right, let's hurry then." By the time I returned from the cafe on the second floor, having confirmed there were no forgotten glasses, the Ursula Express had already departed. I knew it. From the start, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had planned to leave me behind. On second thoughts, as I was processing this, my mother-in-law called. "We've already left," she said, her voice dripping with glee. But I retorted, "Yes, I'm aware. Take care." "What? What did she say?" From the other end, I could hear my sister-in-law. "She's acting tough, saying take care or something. Poor thing, left behind and still trying to act strong." Just before the call ended, I overheard my husband and father-in-law saying they were going to the restroom. About 20 minutes later, the Ursula Express arrived at New London Station. "Where are the guys? They're taking a while." "Maybe they stopped for a beer." In reality, my husband and father-in-law had gotten off the train. Unbeknownst to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, they returned to Metro Park Station, paid for round-trip tickets, and met up with me. Our real destination for this trip was Washington, D.C. My father-in-law had informed me of the scheme my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had planned. He was furious at their constant harassment. He once confronted them, saying, "Enough of this nonsense. Lisa is a good person and important to Harry." But they dismissed it. "Dad, you're just blinded by her looks. Men are so easily deceived." They didn't even try to listen to their father-in-law's opinion. Their ill intentions continued, and my father-in-law decided a harsh lesson was needed. So, he and my husband hatched a plan to leave them behind instead. On the contrary, my plan is to leave my mother-in-law and sister-in-law behind. Thus, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were left on the Ursula Express, likely not realizing until they reached Boston. They probably didn't bring much money, expecting my father-in-law to cover all expenses. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were in for a tough time. They had no hotel to stay in. My husband had taken care of the travel arrangements, and he had canceled the Boston hotel reservation the day after booking it. With little cash on hand, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were definitely in a bind. They won't get it unless we teach them a lesson like this. They're adults. They'll find their way back somehow. My father-in-law, my husband, and I enjoyed some snacks we just bought on the Acela Express heading to Washington. Yes, the two of them going to buy snacks was actually part of our plan. We arrived in Washington before evening. Throughout the journey, there were several messages from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to my father-in-law and husband, but both of them ignored them completely. The three of us thoroughly enjoyed Washington. It's more fun without those two. I was trying not to say that. Both Harry and my father-in-law were in high spirits, making such comments. We had a relaxed trip without cramming too much sightseeing. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who were left behind on the Acela Express, they got off at Boston South Station and waited for my father-in-law and husband, but they never showed up. They realized something was off, but it was too late. They frantically messaged my father-in-law and husband, but there was no response since they had decided to ignore them. They finally realized they had been left behind and headed to the hotel. But the hotel reservation had been canceled the day before. They went to the nearest restaurant and checked how much money they had. Both had relied on my father-in-law's wallet during the trip, so they hardly had any cash and didn't even bring credit cards. Together, they had about $150, just enough for a cheap hotel and a late-night bus ride home. But they couldn't even have a decent meal. They tried to book a bus for that night, but it was already full. So, they reluctantly booked a bus for the next night. For about a day and a half, they couldn't eat properly. They shared a biscuit they bought at the station. They kept messaging my father-in-law and husband, but of course, there was no reply. It seemed like my mother-in-law and sister-in-law no longer had the energy to bother me. For dinner, they bought cereal at a grocery store and ate it in their hotel room. Mom, what's going on? I don't know. Isn't it your father's doing? Who's the mastermind? But this is too much, isn't it? The next day, they went without food or drink and waited until night to board the bus. Apparently, I had a ton of messages and missed calls from them. I had blocked them, so I only noticed later. The next morning, the bus arrived in New York. They slept until the evening. By the time they woke up, my father-in-law, my husband, and I had returned from Washington. I went back to our apartment first, and my husband went to his parents' house with his father. We knew from messages that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had somehow made it back. As soon as they got home, they confronted my father-in-law and husband. My husband and I were on standby, called by my father-in-law. What's the meaning of this? We had very little cash and went through so much. We did it because you two planned to leave Jamie behind. So, Harry and I plan to leave you two behind. But that's cruel. It's her fault. She pointed at me. I wasn't sure how to react, so I just smiled. I am so pissed. Stop smiling. My sister-in-law threw her bottled tea at me, but my father-in-law deflected it with a chop and it hit my mother-in-law's forehead. Ouch! I struggled to hold back my laughter. Haven't you two learned your lesson? My father-in-law shouted. Mom, sis, stop this. It's embarrassing. My husband laughed. What's embarrassing? She's the embarrassing one. Enough.
If you keep this up, I'll divorce you.
What? Divorce? My mother-in-law turned pale.
Sis, Mom, just stop, or I'll get really mad.
The word divorce completely demoralized my sister-in-law and mother-in-law.
It's because of you two that this happened. Just accept it.
My mother-in-law and sister-in-law finally broke down in tears. Father, Harry, it seems they're truly remorseful. Please forgive them. I never wanted things to end this way. Please, I beg you. I pleaded with my father-in-law and husband.
Jamie, we're so sorry.
And there, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law vowed never to harass me again and apologized for everything they had done. Thanks to me, talks of divorce and disownment were off the table. Little did they know, this was all part of my plan. The one who seemed the most excited when we hatched this plan was my father-in-law. But that's a secret. Half a year has passed since then. Recently, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have started treating me normally. Now, the three of us even go shopping and visit cafes together. I finally felt accepted as a part of the family. Next year, I hope to go on a Boston trip with the entire family. This time, without any hitches.
Sick? Why don't you just stay in the hospital forever, then? Over the phone, my husband uttered these cruel words. His reaction, which I never expected, made my voice tremble. What are you saying? I don't need a sick wife. In fact, I've been doing you a favor by being with you all this time. You should be grateful. My husband left me alone with my illness and went off on a trip with his lover. In that moment, the trust I had built up in my husband came crashing down, all at once. I can't believe it. Leaving his sick wife to go on a romantic getaway. Enough is enough. I will show no mercy. Now I will seek revenge, by any means necessary. My name is Lizette, and I'm 28 years old. I've been married to my husband Hervey for 2 years now. We met at the cafe where I used to work. He was a regular customer who approached me, and our relationship blossomed from there. After dating for about a year, we got married without a hitch. I lost my parents when I was in 9th grade. All that was left for my family's house and the inheritance from my father, who was a businessman. Thanks to that inheritance, I was able to go to college. I owe everything I have now to my parents, and I'm grateful. But losing both parents at once left me with wounds in my heart that are immeasurable. I was always afraid that someone I loved might suddenly disappear from my life. I fell into this groundless anxiety, and there were times when I even started to distrust people. During my relationship with Hervey, I expressed my fears many times. He was the one who accepted me with all my insecurities. When he proposed, he said, "I will never leave you, Lizette, and I'll always protect you. So please marry me." But I don't have a family. I will become your family. Huh? I'll be with you as your family for the rest of our lives. I won't let you feel lonely anymore. Hervey. I believed in his words and decided to get married. After getting married, we moved into the house where I had lived with my parents. Having lived alone for so long, married life with him was so bright and happy, it was dazzling. After we got married, he didn't work late, and he came straight home every day. It became normal to eat dinner together, and before bedtime, we would slowly watch a movie together. Those were joyful days. However, about a year after we got married, my husband's overtime work suddenly began to increase. Though his overtime had been almost zero, it gradually increased to 1 or 2 days a week, and before I knew it, most of the week was filled with overtime. 2 months later, business trips were added, and our time as a couple drastically decreased. Dinner became a daily routine that I ate alone. At first, I endured it, but unable to bear the sudden change in our lives, I decided to open up to my husband. Hey, Hervey, don't you think you've been working late too much lately? Sorry about that. Work's been piling up recently. But you hardly worked late even a few months ago. And then there's that business trip the other day. I'm working hard for you, Lizette. To hear you say that, it's honestly a shock. I'm sorry. Frightened by my husband's intimidating tone, I apologized on the spur of the moment. Then he immediately returned to his usual demeanor and smiled, saying, "As long as you understand." Do I really have to endure this? For the sake of our married life, Hervey is working hard every day. I probably should have been more suspicious, but at that time, I didn't have the courage. To me, who had lost my family, Hervey was my only family left. I didn't want to lose my precious family ever again. Because of these feelings, I couldn't confront him any further. Several months later, on this day, Hervey came home in a state of inebriation like never before. Despite my welcoming, "You're home!" He didn't respond at all, went straight to the bed and fell asleep, still in his suit. Why? He said he was working late today. An indescribable anxiety overwhelms me. Why is he drunk? Wasn't he supposed to be working late? What has he really been doing all this time? And where? I had so many questions I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to damage our relationship, so I had been turning a blind eye, until now. When I glanced at my husband, who was sleeping contently in bed, I noticed his mobile phone sticking out of his pocket. Could it be that he's hiding something from me? Such a suspicion crossed my mind. Before I knew it, I had my husband's mobile phone secretly in my hand. While he slept, I used his fingerprints to unlock it. Then, on the screen that opened, I saw a long conversation with someone named Lover. "Thanks to you, Hervey, I had a great time today. Thank you. When can we meet again? Leave your wife soon and be with me." In the photo folder, there were numerous pictures of Hervey with a woman, presumably Lover. Some of them were quite explicit, and I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. With my husband's mobile phone still in my hand, I rushed to the bathroom to catch my breath. Somehow, I managed to keep my composure, but it was too much for me to bear alone. Then I thought of Briella, my best friend from high school, who now lives abroad. She is very intelligent, and after studying abroad in college, she is now working overseas. When I dialed the international number, she answered after a few rings. "Hello? Briella? What should I do? I don't think I can handle this anymore." I cried to her, telling her this. What? Wait, Lizette, what's going on? My husband, Hervey, he's been cheating on me. Cheating? I explained the whole situation to Briella, about how after a year of marriage, his overtime and business trips suddenly increased, how he came home drunk, even though he said he was working late, and how I had seen evidence of his infidelity on his mobile phone. I explained sobbing, and Briella silently listened. When I had finished telling her everything, she spoke to me. "Lizette, listen carefully. I know this is painful right now, but I think it's best to properly gather evidence of the affair for the future." Evidence? But that means considering divorce. Then what? Lizette, do you want to spend the rest of your life with a man who cheats on you? I don't know. I know that you care about your family, Lizette, but can someone who makes you miserable truly be called family? Briella. Her words woke me up. I realized that I had unconditionally believed everything my husband had said. It was strange, thinking back, how suddenly overtime and business trips had become so frequent. Out of fear of losing him, I had turned my eyes away from reality. With Briella's advice, I decided to start taking steps towards divorcing Hervey. First, I transferred all the evidence of his infidelity that was on his mobile phone to mine. Briella introduced me to a lawyer she knew, and I diligently gathered evidence, guided by the lawyer's advice. I followed my husband, regularly checked his mobile phone. Collecting evidence while juggling work and household chores was truly exhausting. I even cut back on sleep, so my body was on the brink, and I collapsed several times. After all that effort, within a few months, I had gathered a significant amount of evidence of infidelity. With all this, I should definitely be able to divorce him advantageously. Finally, all my hard work seemed to be paying off, but just when I thought that, I collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. I thought it was just exhaustion, but the examination revealed a certain illness. I had to be hospitalized immediately. I had gathered the evidence and it was just the right time, but still, there was nothing to be done about the illness. I called my husband to tell him about it. Hervey, can you talk for a moment? What? Didn't I tell you I'm on a business trip for a while starting today? Actually, I collapsed at work. I need to be hospitalized for a bit. Huh? So? What do you mean, so? Is that all you have to say? You're going to be in the hospital, right? You'll be safe there. By this time, my husband had lost interest in me and was meeting with his lover almost every day. His treatment of me had become so careless that I even wondered if he was trying to get caught. Naturally, my feelings for him had completely cooled off. I was fed up with his complete lack of concern, and I couldn't help but ask, "You're thinking it's lucky that I'm hospitalized, aren't you?" Huh? What are you talking about all of a sudden? That's a pain. But it's true, isn't it? Today, you're not going on a business trip. You're going on a vacation with your lover. What? How did you find out about that? It's pretty obvious. Did you actually think you were hiding it? I thought he would deny it more, but my husband surprisingly admitted to the affair quite easily. Perhaps thinking he was already caught, he suddenly became defiant. Yeah, that's right. I am having an affair. You got a problem with that? Ugh. How can you be so brazen? After all this time, you've been deceiving me. It's your fault for being fooled, right? And why don't you just stay in the hospital forever? What are you talking about? I don't need a sick wife. I've been doing you a favor by staying married to you this long, so be grateful. In that moment, all my feelings turned into anger towards my husband. Be grateful? This is not the married life I wanted. He's making a fool of me. I'll make him regret this. I will never forgive you, Hervey. Holding back the urge to scream at him, I calmly tell my husband. Then he responds with propagation. Feel free to do as you wish. You can't divorce me anyway. Why do you think that? Because it's true, right? I'm the only family you have. If you lose me now, you'll be all alone again. Are you okay with that? Huh. Family. Huh. Just behave and we'll remain a family. That's the deal. I'm off to enjoy a trip with my girlfriend. You have fun in the hospital too. With that, he callously hung up the phone. At that moment, a sweet, syrupy woman's voice could be heard through the phone, saying, "Are you done yet?" Perhaps he doesn't feel the need to hide it anymore. Even if his affair is exposed, he thinks I can't move forward with a divorce. Don't underestimate me. If he thinks that just by using the word family, he can fool me so easily, he's sorely mistaken. If you're feeling that way, just know that I have thoughts of my own. As I was filled with determination, I received a call from Briella, perfectly timed. I quickly explained the content of the previous conversation. So, that's the situation. Hervey seems to think I can't divorce him. What? Seriously? How much more can he belittle you? I know, right? Well, I'm planning on getting a divorce. The biggest problem is what to do after the divorce. What do you mean? You see, and Briella probably knows this too, the house I'm living in now is mine. So even if I divorce him, I don't know if he'll leave right away, and since he knows the address, he might come back. I see. After a moment of thought, Briella excitedly exclaimed, "That's it! Hey Lizette, I have a great idea." Huh? I opened my eyes wide at the idea that came out of her mouth. But now, I don't have time to hesitate. I accepted her proposal and decided to proceed with the plan simultaneously with the hospitalization. A few days later, today is the day Hervey comes back from his trip with his lover. I, who had already been discharged from the hospital, had been eagerly awaiting his reaction. As expected, I got a call from Hervey in the afternoon. Hello? When I calmly answered the phone, he suddenly raised his voice in anger. Hey, you! What's going on here? What do you mean, what's going on? Inside the house! Everything is gone except for my personal belongings, isn't it? Yes, that's right. Is there a problem with that? What? Where did you take all the furniture and appliances? You didn't sell them to get back at me, did you? Of course not, silly. I moved them to my new place. What? A new place? The word new place seemed to surprise him quite a bit. I guess the idea of me moving out on my own never crossed his mind. Hervey continued to blame me in a strong tone. Don't mess with me! You can't just move out on your own! We need to talk first! Tell me the address! Huh? No thanks. What do you mean? Are you saying it's fine if I don't come back? Yes, it's fine. What? I don't want to see you anymore, so I moved out, quietly. Oh, by the way, I've already sold the house. Please move your stuff out by the end of the month. What are you saying? You still don't get it? I'm saying, let's get divorced. Finally, I laid the divorce on him. My husband seemed quite confused, repeating words I couldn't quite make out over the phone. Whether it was my bringing up the divorce that bothered him, he eventually started lecturing me in an arrogant tone. Do you really think it's okay to say that? Divorce means our family will be gone, you know? I know, but we haven't been a family for a while now, have we? Don't mess with me. I've always been with you as a family, as a husband. If you insist on divorce, then pay me compensation. Huh? Compensation? Do you even know where you stand? If anyone's paying compensation, it's actually you, okay? Huh? It's not huh. Just so you know, I have more than enough evidence of your affairs. Of course, I'll demand as much compensation as possible from your lover, too. My husband's voice suddenly became very small over the phone, and I could feel his panic. Realizing that he was the one who would be demanded to pay compensation, he quickly changed his attitude and began to plead. Wait, please, I was wrong. Yes? I'll break up with her. I'll start over with you as husband and wife. So, please, just spare me the compensation. My husband is pitifully begging, repeatedly saying, forgive me. With each plea, my feelings for him cooled further, eventually turning into irritation. As if to completely sever my attachment to my husband, I shouted out loud. Enough! You've cheated on me over and over, making a fool of me, and now you say forgive me? Don't kid yourself. I no longer think of you as family. You're the worst kind of man, cheating on your sick wife. I refuse you from my end. Ugh, Lizette, please listen to me. You don't want to be alone either, do you? I don't care about your story. Your excuses are worthless. I won't cling to you anymore. I don't need a family like you. Just go to hell with your mistress. I hung up the phone unilaterally and blocked his contact. Afterward, I left all dealings with him to the lawyer I had previously hired. At first, my husband was reluctant to agree to a divorce, but frightened by the lawyer's words, divorce mediation and divorce trial, he finally agreed to divorce quietly. I continued to demand compensation in a lump sum from both him and his lover. Perhaps because he had told her, it'll never be found out. His lover became furious upon being asked for compensation. She paid me the compensation and immediately ended her relationship with Hervey. Being his junior colleague at the company, the whole office was abuzz with talk of my ex-husband's affair. He couldn't stand it any longer, so he voluntarily resigned from the company. Only debts remained for Hervey. Even when he asked his parents for assistance, they coldly cut ties with him. Now, he can't find a new full-time job, and he's desperately juggling several part-time jobs, struggling to pay off his debt every day. On the other hand, I've turned over a new leaf and started a new life. Since my ex-husband knew about the cafe where I used to work, I requested a transfer, and am now working at a different location. I can't thank Briella enough for suggesting this to me. She'll be returning home temporarily soon, so I plan to thank her in person then. I'm done being trapped by the word family. From now on, I want to cherish the people who care for me, just as they cherish me.
My name is Catherine. I'm 24 years old and work at a preschool. Last year, I got married and now live with my husband, George. He's 37 and works for a major corporation, so yes, there's a noticeable age gap between us. Before we got married, George was incredibly attentive and kind. He would always make reservations at wonderful restaurants for our anniversaries and never forgot to buy me a gift. When I was bedridden with menstrual cramps, he'd swiftly buy me painkillers and sanitary products. I appreciated how understanding he was. His maturity and adult-like handling of situations made him all the more attractive to me. However, after we got married, his kindness faded.
"What is this terrible tasting food?"
Now, such unkind remarks have become common. Before, he would always compliment even my mediocre cooking. But after marriage, he complains about whatever I make. He'd leave my food untouched and start eating food he'd picked up from a convenience store. But I followed the recipe. I think it tastes good. Reacting or replying back would be a major problem. If I showed even a hint of resistance, he wouldn't physically harm me, but he'd yell for hours on end. No matter how much I'd apologize, he'd keep shouting until suddenly it's morning. When this happens, it affects my job, so I've given up on talking back. This is the uneasy piece we've managed to maintain. I'm sorry, I'll cook better next time.
"Next time? When is that? You're so incapable. Don't you have any self-awareness as a wife?"
I'm sorry. No matter what he says, all I can do is apologize. I believe this is what you would call harassment. People often say you should see the true nature of your partner before marriage, but I failed at that. He used to be so kind. It was too hard to see this coming. His words hurt me daily, but I couldn't entirely give up, hoping he'd return to the way he was before. I couldn't get away from my husband because of these struggles. Then, as if to add insult to injury, I got news from my mom. She had been undergoing cancer treatment for a while, but unfortunately, it spread. It seems there wasn't much more they could do. The doctors gave her a year to live. I was blindsided and devastated. My parents' home is only about an hour drive from where my husband and I live, so I decided to visit my mom as much as possible. My husband didn't seem too happy about it. Every time I'd mention going to see my mom, he'd complain.
"You're neglecting our home to see your mother. What are you thinking?"
Mom's only got a year left, you know. I want to spend as much time with her as possible, so I don't have regrets.
"You think you're being a good daughter? You barely earn anything and can't even do the basics right."
That's a bit harsh, don't you think?
"What's that? Got a problem? We live in this nice house because I'm the one earning the money."
We lived in a house bought under my husband's name. Yes, he earned more than I did, but we couldn't buy the house outright, so we took out a mortgage. Before we got married, I offered to help with the mortgage payments. Back then, he sweetly insisted he'd handle it. Look at where that got us now. I might earn less, but I can help with the mortgage too.
"This house is under my name. It's my house."
I knew arguing was pointless, so as usual, I just said, "I'm sorry." When I apologize, he looks pleased, which I think is the safest way to handle things. After hearing about my mother's condition, I began visiting her more frequently. To not upset my husband further, I made sure to finish all the housework before heading to my parents. Sure, he'd complain, but I'd never talk back. I'd just keep apologizing. I didn't want to risk being banned from seeing my mom. Even after a tiring day, hearing my mother's voice would lift my spirits. "Thank you for always coming over." "It's nothing. I want to see you." "Oh, what if we go on a trip, Mom? I want us to make memories." "Oh, that sounds lovely." "I agree too. We'll find somewhere close so it won't be too much for Mom." "How about we go on your upcoming birthday, Mom?" "That sounds perfect. I'm all for it." "I'm so happy. It'll be the best birthday." Seeing my mother's joyous smile, I felt happiness swell within me too. Her birthday was in 2 months. I decided to start planning for it. On my way home, a particular worry weighed on my mind. How to tell my husband about this trip. Every time I go out with friends, I had to report back to him. He would even send multiple emails during my outings, demanding I show him photos of what I was up to. If I ignored him, it led to problems when I got home, so I reluctantly complied. My friends noticed my desperation to take pictures and felt something was off. "Isn't that harassment?" "Harassment?" "Yeah, being verbally abused, being overly controlled, just like what you're going through." It was then that I realized I was indeed being harassed by my husband. Although knowing didn't change the situation, I read online that it's essential to keep evidence. Since then, I've kept his excessive emails, recordings of his abusive words, and even a diary. I have to report every plan with friends to him. But this time, it's a family trip. Surely he wouldn't control that too. Besides, I've told him about my mother's declining health, so he should understand.
You visited your mother again. Don't you ever get tired of that?
Today, we talked about going on a trip for Mom's birthday. It might be the last one, so we're planning to go. When I told him this, his face immediately soured.
A trip? I didn't hear about this.
We discussed it with the family today.
I never gave permission for that.
It's for Mom. She's looking forward to it. I want to make memories with the family. My husband, clearly irritated, listened to my reasoning, but then a nasty grin crept onto his face.
So, when is this trip?
Just 2 months from today. I've mostly decided on the hotel. I just need to make the reservations.
Wow, in 2 months? Then I guess we can't go.
Why not? With a mischievous grin, my husband started fiddling with his cell phone. A few minutes later, he showed me the screen of his phone, leaving me bewildered.
Look, this is an email from my sister. She's getting married on that day. I've already replied that we'd attend. We can't back out now.
A wedding? I don't remember hearing about that.
I told you before. You just weren't listening. Anyway, no trip. We're going to my sister's wedding. If you don't like it, let's get divorced.
You can't be serious. I had no idea a wedding invitation had arrived. My husband never checks the mail. I always sorted the mail, yet I hadn't noticed that invitation. It's hard to believe I would overlook that. It felt odd that my husband would reply to the invitation himself without consulting me. Seeing my disappointment, my husband looked quite pleased. Growing suspicious of him, I decided to secretly check with my mother-in-law, Mary. "Hello, is this Mary? There's something I'd like to confirm." "Catherine, what's up?" I inquired about the sister-in-law who lives with my in-laws. While my husband is quite the character, this sister-in-law, Elizabeth, is also quite eccentric. She turned 40 this year, a divorced woman, and her divorce story was quite tragic. Elizabeth had a child with her ex-husband. But Elizabeth never really cared for the child. Even though she was a housewife, she did neither household chores nor child rearing, simply lazing around all day. There were times when her ex-husband would come home to find their child crying from hunger. And when the child was just 2 years old, Elizabeth did something unimaginable. During this time, sister-in-law was having an affair with a shady guy from the neighborhood. Unbelievably, she would meet her lover while her child was napping. One day, the child woke up from his nap, realized his mother wasn't there, and cried uncontrollably. The child's cries went on for so long that a neighbor noticed and reported it to the police. That's when they discovered the child had been left alone and about the affair. The husband was furious, immediately sought a divorce. While sister-in-law was obsessed with her lover and splurging the husband's money on him, he dumped her unceremoniously. She wasn't good at parenting, and even her own child disliked her, so she had no chance of getting custody. All that was left for sister-in-law were payments for the compensation to her ex-husband and child support. She returned to her in-laws' home. Soon after, she became reclusive, and that continues to this day. So it was surprising to think that sister-in-law, who barely goes outside, would get remarried. Is it true Elizabeth is getting married? To my question, mother-in-law looked shocked. What? I never heard that. She doesn't even bathe or go out. And she hasn't even finished paying the compensation. It's impossible for her to remarry. Just as I thought, my suspicion was right. The story of sister-in-law's wedding was a lie concocted by my husband. My husband told me about Elizabeth's wedding. Also, my mom only has a year to live. I wanted to take her on a trip, but he told me not to because it was Elizabeth's wedding day. There's no wedding. I wonder what he's thinking. He even said he'd divorce me if I prioritized the trip over Elizabeth's wedding. Oh, I'm sorry for my foolish son. Please ignore his absurd comments and enjoy your trip with your mother. She'll be delighted. Thank you, I will. I felt relieved knowing mother-in-law is rational, unlike my husband. But at the same time, anger surged within me against my lying husband. Perhaps he just wanted to prevent me from traveling with my mother. After enduring so much harassment, I felt stupid for always complying. I decided to confront my husband. There's something I need to discuss. That night, I talked to my husband again about the trip.
What?
I've decided to go on the trip with Mom.
I told you it's my sister's wedding day. Are you trying to embarrass me?
It's a nice invitation, but my own mother is more important to me. So I can't attend on that day.
Enough of this. Let's divorce. Leave my house right now.
My husband suddenly began to shout, his face distorted in rage. Probably because for the first time, I had resisted and didn't obey him. He started flinging things, like the TV remote and books nearby. I desperately hid behind the couch, ensuring none of the thrown objects would hit me. Suddenly, a voice louder than my husband's rang out of my cell phone.
It's you who needs to stop.
When my husband recognized the voice as that of my father-in-law, Daniel, his face drained of color.
Dad? I've heard it all. A lie about your sister's wedding, threatening Catherine's with such deceit and resorting to violence. Unforgivable. I'm on my way. If you harm Catherine in any way, you won't get away with it.
George, upon hearing his father's words, looked completely defeated and crumpled to the floor. He then began to mutter to himself in a hushed tone,
This is bad. No, it's not my fault. They're misunderstanding. I didn't do anything wrong.
Looking at him, I felt more scared than disappointed. Silently, I made my way out of the house. As I crouched by the entrance, my in-laws arrived. Mary! Thank you for helping. After hearing our son's words, I was certain something was off with him. I had shared with my mother-in-law the incident about the trip and my confrontation with my husband. Anticipating potential danger, she had suggested that I let her listen to our conversation over the phone. They informed my father-in-law too, ensuring they were nearby and ready to help if needed.
We're going in to confront our son. If you're feeling up to it, Catherine, join us. We will protect you always.
Daniel's words felt incredibly reassuring. I followed my in-laws back into the house where my husband was.
Hey, the house is a mess. What have you done?
As Daniel entered, my husband looked down in silence.
You claimed it was about your sister's wedding to sabotage Catherine's trip? How pathetic of you. Why did you do such a thing?
My husband mumbled his excuses.
Catherine is so gullible. She listens to everything I say. I'm the one supporting her, yet she dared to stand up to me.
Daniel sighed, clearly exasperated.
Catherine, is my son supporting you financially?
No, I work too, and we split the living expenses. I don't pay the mortgage as he insists on taking care of it, but it's not that I can't afford to. My husband glared at me.
You earn less than me. Don't get cocky.
Yes, that's true, but it's not by much, right? It's not like you're earning that much more than me.
Shut up. You always talk too much. Just listen to me.
He shouted and raged at me. But when father-in-law spoke, he instantly lowered his gaze and became silent.
Don't you feel ashamed? Catherine has been trying so hard to make this marriage work, even with you like this. Catherine, he mentioned divorce earlier. You can really go through with it if you want.
Honestly, I had been waiting for someone to say that. In fact, when I decided to bring up the vacation, I anticipated he'd talk about divorce, so I had the divorce papers with me. Yes, after this incident, I've realized I can't be with him anymore. I want a divorce now, but first, I showed him the record of everything he had done to me up till now. All the things you've done to me, it's been unbearable. I'll consult a lawyer and then proceed with the divorce. Make sure to set aside compensation money, so I don't end up like Elizabeth. The diary entries I kept, the relentless emails, the recording from earlier. Knowing the evidence I had, my husband's face turned pale. He probably realized he stood no chance.
Also, you've requested a transfer to the countryside starting tomorrow. It's the toughest job among all the branches. Work hard there and fix that twisted attitude of yours.
He seemed utterly defeated. He had used his father-in-law's connections to land his job at the company, and with father-in-law holding a higher position, he couldn't refuse. Moreover, because of the transfer, he'd have to give up our house, his pride and joy. He had lost everything in an instant and could only hang his head in defeat. I packed my things that same day and decided to temporarily stay at my in-laws' place. If I suddenly took my belongings and went home, my mother would find out about the divorce. I never wanted her to worry at the last minute, so I never told her about the divorce. Then came my mom's birthday. For this special occasion, we went to the Grand Canyon, a place brimming with nature, to help her rejuvenate. Turns out she visited this place when she was pregnant with me. I remember this place. When I was pregnant with Catherine, every time I dip into a jacuzzi, she'd give me a little tap from inside, like a gentle knock. Seeing my mom reminisce with such joy made me emotional. Look at how you've grown. Thank you for coming into our lives, Catherine. Being able to travel with my mom safely today meant the world to me. We had such a blissful time, just the three of us. Fast forward a year, and it's almost miraculous. My mother is still vibrant and alive. Apparently, the trip had been such a blast for her that she's been brimming with enthusiasm for more. Whether it's because of that or not, her health improved and she became more active than before. Now, once a month, she and my dad go on trips together. She says it's the highlight of her life. With my mom back to her lively self, my dad too seemed more vibrant. I'm truly grateful I took her on that trip. I ended up receiving a substantial settlement from my ex-husband and started living on my own. When I finally told my mom, instead of worrying, she seemed oddly excited. "Do tell me all about it." Surprisingly, she was eager to hear about my misadventures, almost like it was a plot from a TV drama. She listened intently to every word. On the other hand, my ex was transferred to a demanding branch office and apparently works himself ragged every day. The compensation he owed me was initially fronted by father-in-law, but he insisted my ex would work it off no matter what. A few days ago, I received a video message in my inbox sent by my ex. In it, he was tearfully apologizing. But when I listened closely, it was all about protecting his own interests.
"I want the settlement waived. Please tell Dad that I want the harassment issue forgiven, and I want to be reinstated to my former position."
Although his coworkers knew about our divorce, they weren't aware of the circumstances. So I forwarded the mail to father-in-law. As expected, father-in-law was furious. "Enough is enough. If you contact Catherine again, I swear it won't be pretty. And if you dare resign, I'll tell every employee about what you did to her." Given my ex's pride, those words seem to have struck a chord. No matter how exhausted he feels, he's been pushing through at work. Oh well. I hope he finds a way to better himself in this new chapter of his life. I just pray he refrains from making the same mistakes again, especially when it comes to remarrying.